the journalists that they want to release this information, because if they release the information, then most of the time, the women, many women, they will refuse to do the abortion.
So for me, like, I know all the emotion, all the emotional effects of abortion, all the news, all the information we have today. I know it's not going to be a happy-go-lucky, easy experience. But for me, at this moment in time, I want to finish my A-levels, I want to go to uni, I want to go to a high-powered job, and there's nothing that scares me more today than getting pregnant.
Let me ask you a question. This is going to sound aside from the issue, okay?
Okay.
It's going to sound aside from the issue. But believe me, it's got everything to do with the issue, yeah? Let me tell you something. This is my contention. I don't know. I think you guys come from an atheistic background, yeah? Or agnostic type. Only because someone said it, not because I'm making assumptions. You could have very well been Christians or something, yeah? But how do you attach value to human beings?
Emotional connection.
Now, what I mean, let me tell you what I mean by my question. There's a tree behind you. Okay? What do you see as more morally abhorrent? Cutting down a tree or killing let's say a 5-year-old?
I mean, I think the answer is stood there for us. But
No, it's not stood there for us. From a philosophical perspective, on naturalism, on a firm atomism, on if we're looking at it from the fact that no value has been assigned to anything in particular, I would argue that actually it's the same.
I strongly disagree with
Okay, can you prove me wrong? On naturalism, on atheism, how do you, as an atheist, as a naturalist, how do you contend with the fact that if I get a big tree and I cut it down, let me make it even more crude. Let me make it a bit more crude. If I go to the butcher, meat shop, you know that slab, that big chunk of meat that you find, hanging. On naturalism, on atheism, your value as a human being is the same as the value of that piece of meat.
I'm not a naturalist myself.
So what are you then?
I have no idea.
Just okay. All right.
I'm agnostic.
I'm very happy with that admission.
So I couldn't tell you the answer to the question for you at all.
No problem.
But for me, the human being, the 5-year-old, has that thought, that consciousness, that experience. A tree doesn't have experience.
Fine, that's good. So first and foremost, I'm happy that you've kind of on naturalism, on atheism, not naturalism, I'm not even a naturalist, but on atheism, on a non-God construct, you've admitted that at best, what we can achieve in terms of attaching value to human beings is a subjective value attachment. It's not going to be an objective value attachment, in the sense that, for me, you started off by acknowledging in essence really, that this is a subjective opinion, that it's just because it has consciousness, right? And it has this experience and that experience. I'm not saying your subjective opinion doesn't matter. It does matter. And we care about it. We really do, yeah? And I think it's a correct one, in fact. First problem identified is that there is no objective way to attach value to human beings over and above any other life form or even inanimate object with the same chemical constructs as the human being. That now we've discussed and we've come to realize that on naturalism, on atheism, it's impossible. I would argue that on theism, it's not impossible, because if we believe in an entity that's an all-knowing, all-powerful entity, then that entity can attach value to said entities, other entities. Do you see how that works? So that's point number one, which is the value problem in atheism. It is a value problem, and it's not found a solution. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no philosopher that's ever come in the post-enlightenment, post-modern world that has ever found a solution to this problem. So by you not having an answer, it's not it doesn't say anything about your intelligence. It really doesn't. It just says that we don't have a solution. As a community of people, if we want to look at this from an atheistic, naturalistic perspective, we don't have a solution for it. There is no reason to attach any value to human being over and above the value you have for any other thing on an objective level. Now, you said from a subjective perspective that you're really saying intrinsically there are attributes that a human being has which are, you could even argue, superior to other attributes. Would you say that? So for example, the fact that human being is a conscientious, sentient being that has the ability to reason and has language capabilities, this renders human being above and beyond, in terms of value, trees and other inanimate, well, trees are living, but let's say even inanimate objects, yeah? Would you agree with that? Do you know what I would say then? Do you know what I would say? I say you're right. If you say that on a subjective level, you guys are being subjective, but I'm saying, look, my objective reasoning, because I get it from religion, right? And your subjective understanding now has come together. We agree the same thing. Coming to abortion. What's this got to do with abortion? I'll tell you. Coming to abortion. First and foremost, the Islamic position is not as rigid as the Catholic position. It's quite similar to the Protestant position, actually. The Protestant Christian position it allows it in certain circumstances. It's not an absolute no in all circumstances. Yeah. But if we were to employ a scientific reasoning to this question, I want to ask you guys a serious question here. When does a human become a human?
When they can think but not make decisions, because technically you can't really make a good solid decision to make intelligent, good decisions.
Okay, so if a human can't make intelligent, good decisions, they're not human. Okay. No, it's okay. We'll come back to it.
Come back to the way your brain thinks. For me, I think three like basic processes.
So thinking.
Of
the heart.
Neurotransmissions.
Neurotransmissions.
And just kind of general like existing, like you know, like touch. That's what
okay,
it is.
so
you, like,
existence.
Tests where you like touch the woman's
so
stomach
okay,
and they react.
Fine. So your definition, is number one the heart. So I'm guessing you're talking about you're talking not palpitations, but you're talking about heartbeat. Yeah, when the heartbeat becomes visible to human being, which is, by the way, anything between 36 to 39 days from a genome perspective. Yeah, if you look at it embryologically, it's anything between 36 to 39 days. And you said neurotransmissions, so that presupposes the existence of a brain. And number three, you said the ability to touch things. Okay.
Or feel touch.
Let me ask you a question then. What if some human being that's 40 years old doesn't have that ability to touch and feel?
Yeah, but it's still gonna have a heart, a neurotransmitter.
Yeah. Okay. So any one of the right. So
let's go with 2 out of 3.
So you're saying 2 out.
If your heart isn't beating, then you're not alive.
Right? Does it have to be 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3?
1 out of 3.
Heart
is dead.
He's saying 1 out of 3.
If your heart isn't beating, then you're dead.
Can we go with 1 out of 3 here?
I don't agree with the government. 24 weeks.
No, forget about the government. I don't care about the government. Okay, I really don't. You know, in a sense, I mean, that has nothing to do with philosophical endeavor. What they say and what they announce and what they say and what they write down. It's not relevant. Yeah. 24 weeks is something interesting as well. Yeah. So that's not an arbitrary. It's not completely arbitrary number. It's not, because 6 months is the time a baby can be alive without an incubator. Yeah. That's the reason why they've chosen that period of time, because you can have a child that's alive outside of the womb at 6 months. That's their logic. That's their rationality. In this country, it's illegal to have an abortion after that period of time. So 24 weeks.
Is it 120 days?
No. It's 24 weeks. It's 6 months. Yeah. So
it depends on the country then.
now listen. Let me tell you something. Let's go with your one. Is it okay now if we go with 1 out of 3 of those things? Fine. I agree with you totally now. We have come to an agreement. That's exactly the Islamic model. There is a hadith narrated by Ibn Mas'ud. Yes, Ibn Mas'ud is one of the companions. He says, the Prophet said, "Inna ahadakum liyakuna fi batni ummihi 40 yawman nutfa, thumma yakuna 'alaqatan ba'da dhalika, thumma yakuna mudghatan ba'da dhalik." He says that certainly one of you is going to be in your mother's womb for 40 days as a nutfa. A nutfa is basically the stage. It's a particular genome stage, embryological stage, whereby the baby has not been formed into a kind of a clinging type reality. It doesn't cling yet. It doesn't cling yet. ثم يكون علقة بعد ذلك ثم يكون مضغة بعد ذلك. Nutfa really is a sperm drop, so it hasn't formed yet. It hasn't taken its form. 40 days. Some scholars of Islam have said that 40 days you cannot have an abortion before 40 days. Some scholars have said 120 days.
This is at school. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, this is only
So maybe in RE you took 120, but there are two schools of thought in Islam. I think Imam Malik and the Maliki school of thought is 40 days because of what does thumma mean here? This is a long discussion Arabic. Point being, this correlates with the 40-day period of when the human becomes a human, according to your definition, because it has the heartbeat
So
now.
we wouldn't disagree.
Huh?
So we don't disagree.
We don't
The
disagree.
long end-
We don't disagree. In certain circumstances, we would say here, abortion is not allowed after 40 days. Or you could say, in some schools of thought, 120 days. It's not allowed unless some scholars of Islam say the woman is in danger. Her life is in danger. Or her, like, it's a serious health risk. Or some scholars of Islam say if there's some kind of really like impending circumstance or extraneous variable that cannot be controlled. So really, this is an example of where Islam correlates quite strongly with what we know of 21st century phenomena. From that perspective, the model that we put forward is that we say generally abortion is not a good thing. We don't want abortion to happen, but sometimes it has to happen, and if it does have to happen, there are guidelines that have to be followed. That's the Islamic position. Does that make sense?
I agree with you in many, many respects. And by the way, you are a wonderful speaker. I wish I could speak like that.
Thank you.
It's fabulous. But I think it's like, for me, it's all that choice element of that carrying a baby for 9 months can be a traumatizing, extremely difficult experience. And sometimes I think it should be an extreme circumstance, but instead just personal choice.
Do you agree that I'm guessing from the undertone of what you're saying, or kind of from the subtextual, I'm getting here a subtext, and the subtext behind the pretext of what you're actually saying suggests to me that you're a feminist, right? Okay, good.
Very strongly.
Okay, very strongly, which is another discussion I can have with you, no problem. But before we have that discussion, feminism presupposes an equality between men and women in social, political and economic realms. Would you agree that human beings should not take the lives of other human beings?
I already know what you're going to say. It depends on when you decide that something is a human being.
Yeah, so you've agreed that the way you've described human being. يا إخوة اسكتوا اخفضوا أصواتكم اخفضوا أصواتكم. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was just trying to tell them to be quiet. Now, but you see, this is the thing. Whether it's a man or a woman, even on feminism, the same logic would have to apply. Let's assume that you can take a baby out of an incubator. They found new technologies. It's not an incubator anymore, they found something else. Now you can have a child that can live at 3 months outside of the mother's womb.
Then reduce the law.
Pardon?
Then reduce the law.
Reduce the law.
I genuinely agree with you. The second they get that technology, it should go down.
No, but
right now, it's the woman's choice until the baby.
No, but hold on. The thing is, that doesn't go along with what you said before. Because what you said is what makes a human, not the fact that he can live or she can live outside of the womb of the mother. But if he or she has neurological pathways, or if it has a heartbeat, or if it can touch and feel. Now, the fact that it's interdependent upon the mother, the host, to take its nutrients through the umbilical cord or whatever it may be, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a human, living human. Do you get what I mean? For example, if someone was hospitalized and they couldn't make do without being dependent on a life support machine, they cannot be detached from it. Now, that is an artificial reality which they are dependent upon. Whereas in the case of the child, the baby, the genome in the mother's womb, it's a living reality which is dependent on. The only thing here that's different is the artificial nature of that thing which that person is dependent on. So a 60-year-old person who's in a vegetated state and is dependent upon a life support machine, that person is in exactly the same situation as a baby, 3 months, depending upon the mother for its nourishment. The only difference is the nature of that which is dependent upon. But that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter whatsoever, because who cares? If it's a living thing that you're dependent upon, or if it's a non-living thing that you're dependent upon. It doesn't have any epistemic weight that you have on one hand something which is living, that you're dependent upon to live, and on the other hand you have something which is not living. Do you get it?
I do get it. It's
So
very clever, I do get it.
Yeah, so from that angle we say that the law should be reduced from 6 months to 40 days, or even at maximum 3 months, from 6 months to 3 months. Why? Because, well, it makes sense from that perspective we just talked about. Even from a scientific perspective, it makes sense. We're not even talking about installment or viability from a spiritual perspective, which is where obviously Catholics get their kind of beef with this, because they believe that conception occurs. Are you Catholic yourself? No, sorry. So, you believe that, they believe that, what do you call it? Yeah, they believe that upon conception, that's when viability happens. That's when the baby is viable now. The baby is not becoming. So for us, as Muslims, we don't have that issue. We don't believe that. We simply don't believe that. It's still a nutfa until at least 40 days. Yeah, so which is more in line with the scientific reality of today anyways. But also in line with that, I mean, generally speaking, more in line with the law, the British law, which we don't care about too much. Generally speaking, it doesn't. I mean, a lot of people have become very legalistic in their approach. If something is legal, then it's morally okay. If it's not legal, it's not morally okay. This kind of approach is not healthy to philosophical discussion, really. Because what can be legal today can be illegal tomorrow. What can be legal tomorrow can be legal today. Anyways, this is all very subjective and relative.
You're just so smart.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm just massively, I can't speak like that. It's nice to hear.
Well, I mean, we'll try our best, we'll try our best. Let's take a step back now and think about naturalism and atheism. I genuinely...
I'd love to... Wait, are you a Muslim? I'd love to know what you have to say as a woman and a Muslim. Like, as a both combined things, I'd just love to hear what you have to say on the matter. On the matter, like on abortion. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. If she, that's fine. I'm going to leave it as that. That's abortion. Done, yeah? Done and dusted. Done, finished. Okay, good.
If I can interject, you're saying, this is the woman's choice, but you have to think about what about the baby? The baby cannot talk. The only thing he has to do is feed and cry, but he's alive and he wants to be alive. So saying that this is my choice, you have to think as well the baby choice. The baby, I'm sure he wants to live. He wants to grow and stuff.
It wasn't anything though. When you're in the womb, you don't want anything. You just.
I think
I think we've done the abortion. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, now abortion is done. I want to introduce you to another topic. I want to tell you something from an Islamic perspective, yeah? Something I don't really, for some reason, I haven't emphasized here, talking to people, but I want to speak to you about it. So, do you know, for us, this is going to sound completely, to secular ears, this is going to sound completely ridiculous. But I'm ready to make that statement, okay? Do you know? wait.
It's going to be in Arabic.
No, I'm going
to. It's about to be so long.
No. To secular ears, this is going to sound incredibly. Do you know? I'll tell you something about the Islamic theology, and then I'll explain it. I just want to see your reaction first. Okay? From our perspective, we were talking about value. And we talked about moral relativity, and on atheism and naturalism, how actually everything is relative. And this is the prevailing philosophical position of most post-Enlightenment, post-modernist philosophers like Nietzsche and Bertrand Russell and Jacques Derrida and others. Yeah. We'll come back a little bit. So in other words, moral relativity suggests that you make your own morality, right? You make your own purpose, you make your own morality. From an Islamic perspective, we say that obviously God you know, the all-knowing, the all-powerful, the all-wise. He is the one who sets the standards. He's the one who makes the morals. For us, the worst sin, the worst thing to do, worse than murder. Wait, what's going on? Worse than murder is this thing called shirk, and I'll tell you what it means. Shirk is the association of partners with God. Before I want to say something. I want to make a controversial statement first. Yeah, I'm going to make a controversial statement, a ridiculous statement, and then I'm going to explain the statement. Let's suppose that this is on Islamic theology. Yeah, you come out from planet Earth, and there was this imaginary button. Yes, but you're a Muslim. Let's say pretend you're a Muslim. There's an imaginary button. You press it, the whole Earth blows up and destroyed.
That's not a great button to have.
It's not a great button to have, right? Let's pretend that button exists. You go now, you're on the moon, on Mars, you go there, button, crazy button, press the button, everyone blows up. You would think that's the worst thing you can do to human beings. And it is. I mean, from an Islamic perspective, killing one person is like killing the whole of humanity, right? It says in the Quran, chapter 5, verse 32, that killing one person is like killing the whole of humanity, right? So killing murder is one of the high sins in Islam. It's not like we don't appreciate murder, we do appreciate it. But the ridiculous statement I wanted to make to you is as follows. Do you know that button that you press and the murder and all that stuff? If someone had pressed that button and killed everyone, and he was a Muslim, it's less severe than doing this thing called shirk. It's less severe. It's very severe. Very, very severe, no doubt. But it's less severe than doing this thing called shirk. What is shirk then? The question. I mean, what is shirk? What is this thing that you're talking? You press that button. What is it? Okay, I'll tell you. Shirk is when you give the rights. We believe in God. God, the creator of the universe, the heavens and the earth, everything, yeah? The maintainer, the sustainer, etc. Shirk is when you give the rights of God to other than God. That's basically it. What are the rights of God? The rights of God from the Islamic perspective are as follows. First and foremost, the attributes of God, as we know, He's all powerful, all strong, all knowing, etc.
How can He be all those things? That's what I want my question about God to be.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. Can we put that into a footnote?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. How is a good question. I'll put that into a footnote. Please remind me of it. But let's presuppose He is all these things. He's all knowing, all powerful, all everything. Yeah, all powerful, all loving, all merciful, most merciful, etc. Yeah, not all everything. That's a bit of an exaggeration. All of those things that I just said. Most merciful, most all powerful, most wise, etc. Yeah. Now, yeah, omnipotent is all powerful, really. Yeah, omnipotent means all powerful. Okay, omnibenevolent, whatever. Okay. The question would be this, and I want you to remember that question I asked you before. What makes the difference between a tree and a human being? So why is it that if I cut down a tree now, most of humanity would say that that's less of a crime than cutting a human being into two? The reason why, your subjective reasoning, which I didn't disagree with, yeah, I agreed with it completely, was that the tree has the intrinsic values, yeah, that tree has are less superior than the intrinsic value that the human being has. The human being has a higher level of attributes, or the characteristics of the human being are superior to the tree. Therefore, the human being is being assigned more value by other human beings and is therefore more important than the tree. Okay? We say the following. What of an entity that has a value that cannot have a value higher than it? Let me say that one more time. What of an entity that has a value that basically, I'm not going to use the word unlimited or infinite, but there cannot be a higher value than it. Yeah? I say the only possible relationship, and this is the Islamic thesis, the only possible relationship you can have with that particular entity is one of ultimate obedience, ultimate love, and ultimate fear. Let me say that one more time.
No one can beat the end. No one's more powerful than the end.
Nothing is exactly.
Disagree with it powerful thing.
Exactly.
But
Not only power, we said knowledge and wisdom. So all of your attributes that you have, as I'm sure you are and you as well, very intelligent people, right? Very clever people, etc. All of those all those characteristics that you have, now basically imagine that those characteristics were that you cannot get higher than them. Basically that you are the most powerful. There's no one can touch you, no one can beat you, no one knows more than you. You know, if we bring all of human beings, not forget about the speaker's story, I'm going to knock you out here. All of human beings, forget about Speaker's Corner, all of the human beings in the whole world, we put them together and we have some kind of apparatus, we have some kind of mechanism, we have some kind of way of putting all those human beings' intelligence together and aggregating all of that intelligence into one sum, yeah? All of those human beings would be closer to knowing nothing than they would be to knowing everything. Can you imagine the level of ignorance we have? Can you imagine the level of ignorance we have? We are ignorant. There's too much going on in the universe. There are literally 2/3 of the undersea that we have not even explored yet. And this is planet Earth. Imagine the universe, right? That's human being. Now imagine an entity that has all knowledge. He can hear all. He's all-seeing. That is an entity we're saying is untouchable in that sense, in that figurative sense, of course, yeah? Now, what we're saying is that the only possible relationship you can have with such an entity is one whereby you're submissive to that entity. You cannot have another. That is the most appropriate, in terms of appropriacy, that is the most appropriate relationship you can have with that entity. In the same way as you would find killing that child an egregious transgression of the human rights of that child. The case, because of the intrinsic characteristics of that child, we say is the same reason why shirk, association of partners with God, is the most egregious transgression or crime that anyone can make on anything. In other words, just like the child has rights, the creator has rights, yeah? So when someone realigns the appropriate relationship they should be having with the creator and they realign it to the creation, we say that that is the worst possible realignment.
But what happens on that day, billions and billions and billions of years' time, when we have literally seen everything, done everything, worked out everything, there's no illness, there's no... Human beings are perfect, we know everything. What happens to that entity then? What happens when we have all the knowledge and there's just... Like, why should we strive to get there rather than obey someone that is there?
What I'm saying to you is this. That entity, if we presuppose its existence, it doesn't have an end, right? It continues. And we're saying that human being will never reach a point where it knows everything, by virtue of its insignificance on the universe. Its placement on the universe is an insignificant placement. We will never be able to encompass all that which is around us. For that reason, we say that, look, when we're talking about that appropriate relationship, now we'll go back to our analogy, the ridiculous thing that we said, that I know to secular ears it sounds like the most ridiculous thing you can ever say. Not killing one child, killing all the children, not killing one human, killing all the humans. Press a button, you're on Mars, press one button, every human being blows up, the whole planet Earth is blown to smithereens, yeah? We're saying, for a Muslim to do that is one of the worst things you can possibly do, right? It's you know, you're going to hell, you know, how dare you do that? But that is not as bad as the person giving the rights of God to other than God. Why? Now you might say, what the hell are you talking about, my friend? What the hell are you saying? The reason why is because the aggregate value of all of those human beings on that planet Earth, as we've talked about value assignment, and this was a big theme of what we were talking about today, the aggregate value of all those human beings combined on that planet Earth doesn't even amount to a drop in the ocean compared to the value of God. Therefore, when we talk about God's value, inappropriacy when it comes to the rights of God has a more severe implication, has a deeper consequence, has a higher ramification. For that reason we say this. We say that the most appropriate relationship to have with an entity that is all powerful, all knowing, all hearing, etc., is that relationship of submission. That's what Islam actually means. Islam is submission to one God. And the biggest crime of humankind is to misappropriate that relationship and to assign the rights of God to other than God. That's the biggest crime. That's, from my perspective, the clearest thing I can say about the Islamic thesis. Do you get that? Now, let's bring out the footnote you were saying. How do we know that God is all powerful, all knowing, all hearing, etc.? How do we know that? I say this. Let's go back to the dependency, because we were talking about the baby on the incubator. We were talking about as well human being on a life machine, right? One theme that we will always come back to when we're talking about these issues is contingency, is dependency. Contingency is dependency, right? I say the following. In the realm that we live in, everything is contingent. Everything is dependent. In the realm that we live in, everything is dependent. In the universe, everything is dependent. Something is dependent upon something else. Give me an example of something other than that. Give me an example of one independent entity that lives within the universe and is with us now that we can point the finger at, empirically see and see. There's nothing, right? Everything in the universe is dependent upon something else. The universe, therefore, and before I'm accused by some atheist or someone of committing the folly of composition, because there is a fallacy called the folly of composition. This is not reasoning by composition. This is an inductive type argument, actually, if you think about it. Because I'm looking at things that I can empirically see. So this is inductive reasoning. I'm saying that here, the universe itself must be dependent. Especially if you presuppose a beginning to the universe, which is the prevailing theory in science. Okay. If that is the case, what is it dependent on? That's the question. And you continue going backwards. So it's dependent upon something else which is dependent. It requires an independent entity to start it all off. That's what it requires.
And your independent entity is Allah.
Forget about the word Allah. Allah in Arabic just means Al-Ilah. Al-Ilah just means the God. That's what, literally Allah just means the God. It's just an Arabic word. The Christians call God Allah. In Arabic, Christian Arabs, they call God Allah. Eli is very close to Allah. Eli, lema sabaqtani. You might have heard this in the Bible. You know, God, why have you forsaken me? Eli, lema sabaqtani. In Aramaic, Eli. The Aramaic Eli is very similar to the word Allah. Now the point is this. We're saying that there was an entity that came before the universe which is independent. We ask ourselves, what other attributes must this entity have had in order to bring rise to the universe, to cause the universe? Unless someone says, I don't believe in causation, which is something some people say, they throw all of the laws of logic out the window. Don't believe in causation, fine. Even if you don't believe in causation, what must this entity have had in order to allow for another entity, which that entity is dependent upon this entity, to exist? It must have had knowledge, no? When you look at the fine-tuning of the universe, and you look at all of the constants being completely finely tuned, all of these things must require knowledge. It must have had power, no? It must have had power, because if it didn't have power, it couldn't be interdependent. It couldn't be independent, sorry. It must have had a seeing ability and a hearing ability, no? Because how could it visualize, how could it sketch the plan, as it were, and bring it to existence? So the things that we were talking about, the attributes of God, are actually logically reasoned. They're not illogical. They're logically reasoned. Let me tell you something. Let me ask you something. Imagine now we're walking in the speaker's corner. I'm being 100% serious. We're walking in the speaker's corner and we see a ball. Wait a minute, what do we see? We see a ball, a large ball, hovering. Okay, hovering in the middle here of speaker's corner. Hovering ball. I say, where did that ball come from? What are you gonna say?
No idea.
No idea is fine. It's good. Fair enough. But are you gonna say, you know, that ball came from nothing? Would you say that? That ball came from nothing. You never say that, because we know that something cannot come from nothing. Okay, good. Are we going to say that there were an infinite amount of balls and this is just one of them? Does that sound like a reasonable conclusion? There was an infinite amount of balls and this is just one of them. Maybe you say no. You know? If I said, listen, the ball created itself, you're going to say it's not possible because you can't exist and not exist at the same time. So what you'd say about the ball, that the ball had a creator of some sorts, an intelligent creator of some sorts. Does that sound like the most reasonable conclusion? It does, doesn't it? Let me tell you something today. That ball is the universe. The universe that we live in is literally an expanding ball in space. Can you imagine? The universe we live in now is an expanding ball in space. The same options apply. The same exact options apply. So we say the ball of the universe, which is expanding, must have had a creator. Must have had an intelligent force behind it. We call that intelligent force Allah. We do, yeah? We don't say it's three in one entity. We call it just as one entity that created that ball. Does that make sense? Okay. Now the creator of that ball assigned purpose for everything inside of that ball, alright? And human beings, which he also created. He assigned purpose and gave them value. And he also gave the human being an ability to recognize the ball. To recognize him. Sorry, not the ball. Yeah, an ability to recognize him. Then he reminded the human being. He reminded the human being using human beings, other human beings. Sending a medium, which we call an angel. Wait a minute, isn't this fairy tales? Isn't this mythology? You're talking about angels now, my friend. No, hold on. Yes, it's a metaphysical reality. An angel is a metaphysical reality. We believe it's a metaphysical construct, religious construct, which we can't see or touch or hear. But just because you can't see something, secular ears, once again, when you hear the words angels, I know how it feels, yeah? When you hear the word angels or devils, or something, I don't believe in that. Angels, no, man. We've already dispelled all of those kind of things in the Enlightenment period. Don't bring me back to these angels and devils. No, hold on. I know you've heard this before.
Can we see
Call them what you call them. They're angels, yeah? These angels, these mediums, communicated with selected human beings aforetime. We believe that connected with many human beings, all of which told the people the same message, which was to basically submit to the intelligence behind the creating of the ball. For the reason we talked about before. It's the most appropriate relationship we can have with that creator is to submit to them, that creator. That's the only relationship. And only then will you find peace and tranquility. Yeah? You will not find peace and tranquility doing your own thing or trying to find your own purpose. That is the message of the prophets, all of them. So we believe in Jesus, we believe in Abraham, we believe in Moses. The final prophet we believe is Muhammad, yeah, who came to the Arabs, but also to all of human beings. Yeah. Now, does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we believe in. That's why we're Muslim. Yeah. But it's not just that. It's not just the fact that we believe in that. We believe in that all of the prophets that came to their respective peoples came with two things. A message, which was the same message I've just told you now, and some kind of evidence base. And the evidence base is different depending on the prophet and depending on the customs of the people. So for example, Moses, he split the sea. We believe in this. Yeah, we believe that Moses split the sea. Jesus cured the dead, rose the dead with God's permission. He cured the blind with God's permission. We believe in those things. We don't disbelieve in those things. We don't believe that he was God or the Son of God. We don't believe that. Yeah, but we believe that he was the Messiah and that.
Agnostic, definitely agnostic.
The question of evidence is an interesting question. Yeah. The evidences that Islam has, I'm going to try and summarize it in a quick form. First and foremost, that is the Quran itself is a preserved scripture, and it claims to be, and that's something exclusive and specific to Islam over and above all the other religions. All of the other religions, especially Abrahamic religions, yeah, ancient religions don't have preserved scriptures. What you would expect for a religion that's meant to be continued until the end of times, for it to have a preserved scripture, Number two is that is the challenge, or what is referred to as the inimitability challenge. The fact that the Quranic discourse cannot be imitated. That's another challenge in the Quran. Because the language is the syntax of the language and the lexicons of the language are placed together in such a phraseological way as cannot be imitated by those people that know the language, basically, in Arabic. And that was recognized by the experts of those people. That's two. Number three, also there's no contradiction in the Quran. And number four, as we said before, things like predictions of the future. So for example, chapter 30 of the Quran, verses 1 to 6, you'll find that the Quran makes very specific predictions about the future, what's going to happen in the future. With the Roman and the Persian Empire, that the Romans will defeat the Persians in 3 to 9 years, and it will happen in this place, and all these things are mentioned. That Islam will spread to this country, to Egypt, to Yemen, it will even go to Pakistan, to Sindh, Al-Hind, India, all of these places. So it's referring to the predictions of what's going to happen in the future. And a lot of those predictions are very, very specific, country specific, time specific.
The Romans means the Byzantines.
Yeah, so the Roman Empire, the Byzantium, all these things, very time specific. So these act as a probabilistic way of checking the veracity of the Islamic message. Because actually, you can put this into a mathematical calculator. From a probabilistic perspective, probability theory has like 2 or 3 ways of calculating. It's classical probability theory, this and that. There's more than 2 or 3. I can't remember them now. Yes. But you can actually put this into a probability machine, and you come to the conclusion that actually the probability of someone predicting all of those things as being the truth comes to less than 1%, which gives one a strong grounding from an evidence-based perspective that the Quran is in fact extraordinary, to say the least. Yeah, that the claims mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah are extraordinary. Now, I'm not gonna. If you do want to become a Muslim, you can. Is what you'd be doing generally, or simply speaking, is just coming into the faith of Islam. You'd be submitting your will to God. You'd be looking at the Quran and all these things, and then you could decide slowly to start doing the things that now have to be done, like 5 prayers a day and these things. And all those things are injunctions placed by the Creator to the human beings. Does that make sense? All right. So are you ready to? All that actually. Let me tell you how this works. All that would happen is that you would say 2 phrases in Arabic and in English, yeah? After you've said those phrases, you're initiated, now you're a Muslim, basically. You believe that there's a higher a power that needs to be worshipped or submitted to. That's what you believe. Rather than believing in nothing, or rather than believing in an atheistic belief, which is that the universe created itself, or that we came from nothing, or something like that. You'd say, no, in fact, what I've come to believe is that there was a creation, there was a creator, yeah, and that creator is continually maintaining us, and that he's assigned a fixed purpose for us. That's the difference now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, good.
What are your thoughts?
I think it's all very, very, very intelligent, and I like it. I think it's what you should I think I would follow. Not in the way of us claiming them with it, but the general idea is something that I would think myself. But if they ever do get the science to say no, sorry, wrong, then that's something we should automatically flow to. So while it just...
Are you referring to the abortion thing that we were talking about?
No.
Yeah.
So they created the Earth. The day that science is discovered, then I think everyone needs to fly and just stop.
What sign can convince you that Quran is from God?
So I want to understand a bit more of what you just said.
Let me.
Yeah, sorry, go. Yeah, sorry.
What will convince you that Quran is word from God? Have you thought of that?
Something extraordinary.
What?
That
What?
I don't
Say
know
it.
until it.
Well, think.
You don't know
But
until
think.
it hits you. You don't know. You
No,
have a
but
moment
think.
of belief. Everyone has it.
If you think that God exists, then you have to have a proof, right?
I don't know God. I don't know God.
She's
You said-
agnostic, she's agnostic.
Yeah, but if you are agnostic, you have to have proof. Why are you agnostic?
Because we don't believe.
It means you
in
don't know. I'm not
there is a thing.
atheist. I'm agnostic. I don't know.
She doesn't know.
I know what agnostic is, but what I'm asking you, Have you never searched for God, or you just became like agnostic? No, I don't believe nothing.
Well, I didn't grow up in a religious family, but I did grow up in a family that was like, there is no God, and you shall not believe there is a God. So I've never had someone help me formulate an opinion, so I just don't know.
I think at this stage, what I want you to do is just think it over. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like I don't want to make you feel like there's pressure on you to make any kind of decision. Seriously, yeah? But hopefully today, have you seen the other side of the... Yeah, like my job as someone who tries to educate people on Islam, yeah, is literally to do that. To give people what the facts are, the reasoning behind why we've made our decision, and then the choice is yours. Do you get it? So what I'm going to do when we switch off the camera is I'm going to give you guys my details and stuff, how you can contact me and stuff like that. We'll give you some resources and some things like that. And if you have any questions based on the reading that you do, then you can come and ask me.
Okay.
Yeah? It's early days, I understand this. Look, not everyone has the same upbringing as me and you. Where are you from? Turkey? Kosovo? Pristina? Yeah, man, that's very nice. But even in Kosovo now, we have to do dawah there, you know?
Is the argument convincing to you?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
Has it cleared any misconceptions that you may have had about Islam in the first place? Because a lot of people are not actually aware about Islam. They know about the religion, but only take on board what's really said to them from what they, when they hear things in the media, terrorism, the mistreatment of maybe women in Islam, and they have a very sort of a very narrow view of Islam.
For us, our only real experience, I think that we experienced at school, and it's not exactly the best thing or educating in religion itself, let alone Islam, which is the majority religion in this country. So it's not something that you kind of get taken into where it's just not at all.
No, fair enough. Look, once again, I'm going to give you guys my details that you can, like my email address, stuff like that. Then you can do your own reading and come back to me and ask me any question. Yeah?
Thank you. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, yeah?
Thanks.
See you later. How's it going? How you doing? You came at the end there. It's not mine. It's can you get that guy, Naveed? Naveed? Yeah. Can you tell him to...
Yeah, no worries. Jazakallah khair.
Hi.